Hey everybody, and welcome back to the internet once again. So, unfortunately, I can feel myself coming down with a semi-annual cold, which means I'm probably going to have a really crappy voice later this week. So, I'm going to be pre-recording most of this week's videos today while I still have somewhat of a voice, so I don't miss any days. So, hopefully this turns out alright. So this first story is called, Kid Pulls a Knife Out and Threatens Me, then Goes Crying to His Mother When He Can't Hurt Me. So this happened like 9 or 10 years ago when I was 7 or 8 years old. I was a scout back then and part of a group which was, for the most part, filled with friends and people I knew. I was popular because back then I was social and easygoing. I was friends with everyone and everyone was friends with me and everyone else. But as always, there's one exception to this. In all honesty, Entitled Kid was a freaking dummy. He would yell, he would fight, he would make others cry, he did what he wanted. Back then I thought he was special ed and that's why I tried to be friends with him, but nope. Later in life, when we went to the same high school, I learned that he was just dumb. Like I said, this kid was a dummy, and would always be trying to get into fights with everyone. People were sick of it, and in time, so was I. I don't remember clearly what the guy did to deserve a shouting from me. He probably was harassing girls or hitting boys, but I freaking flipped on him. Now, at this time, he didn't take out his knife or begin to cry. Instead, he just stopped shouting and stopped whatever the heck he was doing. For the rest of the day, he would just sit at the back of our cabin and just stare at me, menacingly. So let's skip a week ahead in time. It was the next scout session, don't know what else to call it, and things were going well. We were doing something time-consuming, so everyone's attention was at the things they were doing, whatever that was. Entitled Kid, of course, wasn't doing anything, and instead he decided it was better to run around the cabin. The scout leader tried her best to stop the madness, but that only fueled Entitled Kid's rampage. While on his rampage, it didn't take long for him to find the door to the log cabin that was next to the main cabin, and when he did, well, crap hit the fan, hard. I was sitting next to the cabin and could hear everything he did and said there clearly. He says, "Oh my." He started whispering from the log cabin. He says, "Hey, Joel," me, "come here for a sec." At first I thought, what the heck is he doing now? But I soon became curious. He wouldn't stop whispering and I kind of wanted to know what the bugger has found. So, like a stupid kid I was, I went there. I say, "Yeah, what is it?" "I got something to show you." After a bit of searching, I found him at the back of the cabin. Now at this time, I thought he was going to apologize for being a dick to everyone, and I was quite ecstatic. I knew this would be a story I would milk the crap out of, something to brag about to my friends. I was so intimidated that he apologized to me. Well, I got a story out of it, but not the one I was hoping. I say, "What you got there, buddy?" His back was turned against me, and I didn't see what he was hiding or doing. After I asked him what he was doing, he turned around. He said, "You see this, Joel?" I couldn't see what he had in his hand, but I saw his twisted grin. I say, "I can't see it. Could you bring it closer?" He says, "Sure." And now I saw it. A dull, red-handled knife. He says, "Do you see it now, Joel?" Now at this point I said something along the lines of, "Oh crap," or "What the heck," and booked it out of there, with the dude laughing maniacally behind me. I ran out of the log cabin into the main cabin and tripped. This diverted the leader's attention, who now noticed that Entitled Kid was gone and that I was on the cabin floor panicking. The leader says, "What's wrong, Joel? Where's Entitled Kid?" I say, "It's Entitled Kid. That wanker's got a knife." Yep, I said wanker. That one I remember vividly. He says, "What?" I said, "He's trying to gut me." It took a moment for her to realize what was happening, but when she did, she ran into the log cabin fuming. My friends came closer and asked me what was happening before I could answer them. My friends came closer and asked me what happened, but before I could answer them, I heard the leader scream Entitled Kid. "What makes you think it's okay to threaten someone with a knife?" He says, "I was just showing it." He says, "Well, what makes you think that you have any right to hold one without a supervisor? You could not only hurt yourself, you could have hurt Joel." He says, "I swear, get out of here. Go outside and wait for your mom to come pick you up." She then came back into the main cabin and told one of the other leaders to look after us. She then went outside and waited for the mother to come pick up the little devil. Now, according to what I had heard the leaders tell the others after this incident, the mother was freaking furious. A complete and utter entitled mom who tried to tell the leader that I was properly the aggressor and that I was a freaking son of a bee. At the time I laughed at this with my friends, but had I known she would come for me the next week, I wouldn't have been laughing. In order for you guys to understand better where me and my friends were when this happened, here is the main cabin. Now, a week after this incident, me and my friends were on top of the bridge you can see in front of the building. We were screwing around, doing dumb stuff, playing tag, stuff like that, when suddenly, the entitled mom shows up. The conversation goes something like this. She says, "Which one of you is Joel?" I say, "Here, ma'am." She says, You're the one who bullied my darling." I say, "What?" I then noticed the entitled kid on the back seat bawling his eyes out. "Oh, you're entitled kid's mom. Yeah, he tried to slice me with a knife." She says, "He would never." She then went on to list some positive things about him, which seemed pretty BS to me and my friends. "He's a gentleman," yet he harassed little girls. "He's great at school," yet he couldn't be bothered to pay attention for a single second. That, and he was an F and D student in high school, so. "He's got more friends than any of you," yet he had somehow become an outcast in our scout group. I honestly got bored at her ramblings and went back to play with my friends. Some of them kept shouting at her, others ignored her. One of my friends, a girl I had known since kindergarten, started straight up roasting this 30-year-old woman. I can't remember what she shouted, but I remember her entitled mom's reaction. "Shut up, you bee, this ain't none of your business." Now, this didn't stop my friend. In fact, it fueled her rage even more. Knowing what kind of woman her mother was, this didn't surprise me one bit. As time went on, one of the leaders noticed the commotion and came back to check what was going on. Entitled mom noticed this and got out there fast. After the leader asked us what had happened and we told him, he went and told the main leader and she was furious. She went and straight up banned the entitled kid. A ban which was lifted just 3 years ago in 2016, when entitled kid wanted back in the scout group. My career as a scout had already came back to an end in 2011, so it didn't bother me, until I started it again in the autumn of 2016, and had to cope with this dummy again. But that's for another story. I mean, come on, he was only playing with the knife. That kid would never do anything wrong. I swear these characters seem like something straight out of a TV show or something. Okay, this one's called "She Tried to Stop Me from Saving a Man's Life." So I worked at an emergency room for 6 years. I'm awful full of stories, but when it comes to entitled people, this one sticks out in my memory. Every person who has worked in the ER knows that Mondays are the busiest day of the week, and also when all the crazies come out. This day was no different. I work as a nurse in a triage, where you initially get assessed in the front before going to the back. Here we determine who needs to go back first and who can wait. We had a few stretchers in the front for people who needed to be monitored a little closer or needed IVs, blood draws, labs. There were 6 stretchers, but this day was so busy all 6 stretchers were filled, plus 5 more in the hallway. This lady comes in an ambulance, but because her symptoms did not indicate an emergency, she was put in a stretcher triage to wait her turn. She was in a lot of pain. After assessment, I recognized her symptoms as being caused from gallstones. Painful, but in this case not life-threatening. We put her on a stretcher, started an IV, drew labs, and hooked her up to the monitor just in case. A few minutes later, entitled daughter comes in the front door. One look at her and we knew she would cause problems. She had everything from the shoes to the haircut. A classic rich Karen. When she saw that her mom was still in the front and hadn't been seen by a doctor yet, she started screaming that she knew the CEO of the hospital, and that we would all be fired if we didn't get her mom to see the doctor right now. We explained that her mom has a history of gallstones, and even the patient was saying that she has had this pain many times because of the gallstones. We explained about being really busy and that there was no rooms available in the back, and we would get her back as soon as we could. She eventually calmed down but was still antsy. About an hour later, another patient comes in and we put in the stretchers besides the patient and the entitled daughter. This patient had worrying complaints, but on initial assessment we could not find anything wrong. Now, as a nurse, you learn to always trust your gut. When your gut sounds an alarm, you listen. Something about this patient was setting my alarm bells off, but all his vitals were normal and I had no solid evidence to declare him an emergency. I hooked him up to the monitor and kept a very close eye on him. I let the charge nurse know of any concerns, and she said to let her know as soon as something changes. Not even 5 minutes later, something changed. Now at this time, I should explain that this hospital was a level 1 trauma center, meaning we get all the bad cases from car crashes to gunshot victims. Since we had to be ready for any traumas, life-threatening injuries, we had a room with 3 beds that was closed off from the rest of the beds because traumas usually involve a lot of people and a lot of blood. Even on busy days like this, those rooms were empty unless there was a trauma patient. Now back to the critical patient. I was taking vital signs of the patient when I look over to see critical patient. I noticed a worrying change in his heart rhythm and stopped with the patient to start assessing the critical patient to see what was going on. That did not sit well with the entitled daughter. She actually grabbed my arm and told me to finish with her mom. I jerked my arm free and said I had to make sure the critical patient was okay. As I turned around to the critical patient, his rhythm went into VFib, which is life-threatening rhythm. With VFib, you literally only have less than a minute for life-saving interventions. I called the charge nurse to inform her of CP's condition, all while unhooking CP from the monitor and throwing his bed into drive. As I started pushing him back to the trauma room, entitled daughter actually jumps in front of the stretcher and stops it. She's screaming that her mom was there first and needed to be seen before CP, and screaming that I was a liar and that she was going to get me fired. I'm usually a mild-tempered person, but knowing CP was literally seconds from dying, I said to the entitled daughter, "You have a choice. Get out of my way or get run over," as I started pushing the stretcher forward. Now, I'm really good at pushing stretchers fast and getting patients where they needed to go in a hurry. One of the reasons I was part of the trauma team. Entitled daughter tries to stand firm, but she saw I wasn't going to stop and jumps out of the way, just as I was an inch from hitting her. Unfortunately, she did not move fast enough and I ended up running over her foot, which I found later broke 2 bones. At this point, I didn't care and got the patient back to the trauma room, leaving the entitled daughter screaming, lying on the floor. We spent about 30 minutes on CP, but he ended up dying. By the time I got back to the front, the patient and entitled daughter had been taken to the back to see a doctor, but my charge nurse warned me that they were filing a complaint against me. A few days later, the actual CEO of the hospital came to visit me the next shift. He was known to be a kind and fair man. Since this happened during a time before cameras were put in the ERs, he had to take what happened from word of mouth. Apparently, the entitled daughter said I assaulted her several times and put her mom's life in danger by not assessing her properly, and that I should be fired. It turned out that the patient did actually have gallstones and nothing else. I calmly explained what had happened, and that entitled daughter's actions might have ended up in the critical patient dying because of the delay she'd caused by her actions. When I got to the part of what I said to the entitled daughter and running over her foot, the CEO actually started laughing and tried to cover his mouth to hide his laughter. He explained that the entitled daughter was a friend of his sister, and he knows what kind of person she is. Not only did I not get fired, but he put a personal note in my file praising my actions. On my next review, I got a large raise, plus a bonus, thanks to the CEO's note. Side note, the hospital gave an award twice a year to 2 employees that exhibited excellent skills in their profession. In my review, they informed me that I had won this award because of the CEO's note. It came with a $500 bonus. Hey, that's pretty cool. I mean, it's kind of sad that the critical patient ended up not making it, but at least everything else turned out okay. I think it goes to show that if you're doing your job and someone comes in screaming that they're going to do whatever it takes to get you fired, as long as you are reasonable and you just do what you're supposed to do, you're likely to not actually get in trouble because a lot of high-up management can recognize these entitled people and not give them the credibility they're trying to gain by just screaming at everyone. And on to a short but final story for today called I Witnessed Karma at Work. So today, while on my way to work, I was honored to witness Karma reach out her hand and dispense karma justice to an idiot who so desperately needed it. I was in the middle lane of a 3-lane road. Traffic was not bumper to bumper, but was very busy for 6 p.m. I heard an engine whine coming up behind me, and in the left lane, this beat-up duct-tape crap box with a $9,000 stereo blasting flew past me. I looked at how fast I was going, and seen I was going 48 miles per hour. Still with the flow of traffic, and this guy flew past me like I was a constipated turtle. I watched as he weaved in and out of traffic, going from the far left to the far right, then the middle lanes, and just kept weaving until I could no longer see him. It was at that point that Goddess Karma herself pointed the finger at him and said, "Off is the direction I wish you to go," and the sound of a police siren was heard ahead of me. As I got further along, I was blessed to see the car was pulled over by 3 local deputies. And of course, one must always give the goddess her dues, so I passed him. I gave him the karma salute by pointing at him and laughing. All praises the goddess Karma. I bet we all wish we could see something like this whenever we see psycho drivers just being reckless. Anyways, that's all for today's video. Hopefully this week works out for all of us, so thanks for watching.